Hey guys, did you guys see Renee's email this morning and last week about the mock reviews this Thursday? So this Thursday, as is doing mock reviews for the pre-dental students from the pre-dental side on campus, where they'll come to the dental school and then they sit down with one of us or other secondary point of views and ask them questions that are already prepared and have them answer and give them feedback on it, so that when they go on interviews they're more prepared for it. So it's Thursday at 5:15 at Oaks. Has anyone signed up already to help out? Couple, yeah. Normally there's a lot of first years who help out, and it helps because we're the freshmen throughout the interview process and can remember it best. So the most constructive feedback to give that. So if people are able, willing, and free to help out Thursday afternoon at 5:15, it'd be really appreciated. Anyone interested? I know. We all, it's only going to take 45 minutes to an hour, look at it as a study break, doing something good. They're expecting a lot of people, 30
Counselors are community service.
Counselors doing something nice. It's just, something like that ASSA does. It's good, just kind of interact with students and help them out. We were in the same spot a year ago, 2 years ago, so. Nice to meet them. Also, has anyone signed up for ASSA yet? I know some people gave me text last week. Yes? For ASSA? Yeah? And if you did, did you fill out the Google form link as well? No? Alright, so I'll forward it to everyone. But it's in order for them to sign you up national ASSA, they need have student information on it. Yeah. I'll send it to everyone. So yeah, if you paid already, you need a check or Venmo or cash or whatnot, just make sure you fill out the Google form. And then if you didn't sign up yet, you should sign up, but it's really great to be part of that. Yeah. Yeah, it's an email.
Okay, I guess we're mostly all here. As you can see, today there's a lot of stuff. But as I'll explain to you towards the end, it's all look and see. There's not a lot, not the section like there was last Friday, which is one of the more difficult sections. So there's lots of stuff you have to get finished.
Do you think you could just because I don't know if everybody knows, could you just reiterate about the lower limb for everyone and what the plans are?
Oh yes. I was going to talk about that on Wednesday, but that's okay. Okay. So there's lots of non-class days in the next couple of weeks. I canceled tomorrow's class because I'm going to throw it all in today. There's no class on Friday because you have something or other. And I pushed all the material so that it's essentially being done by Wednesday. Most of the stuff on the exam will have been finished. However, and I threw away next Wednesday's exam, so that's going to be a review day. And then the Friday, there's also nothing on that day. However, to make up for this,
Is there also nothing next Tuesday?
yes, but, well, as far as I know. But, yes.
Wait, why are we not in class on Friday?
What?
What time
Well, if you want, we can have a class on Friday. Okay, no, well, that's a potential issue. Okay, so because there have been lots of sort of days canceled and sort of, you know, open days so that you could study for exams, it means that November is going to be crowded, like more or less 4 days a week. Which means that most of that's sort of standard stuff. We're going to be doing this, you know, then when we're actually doing the mouth, for example, for 3 or 4 days, and the nasal region and stuff like that. There's another reason why. Anyway, why I shoved a lot of stuff forward and not back. However, just as we gave you a pro-section and introduction to the upper limb, Dr. Fernandez lecture in pro-section earlier this month, I want to do a little bit of that on the lower limb. And since there were 2 days, there's Monday and Tuesday next week, which are holidays, so we're sort of giving it up. I wanted to take one of those days, Monday, and just give a short introduction to the lower limb. And we'll have a pro-section of the lower limb that we can go over at your leisure, shall we say, Monday or Wednesday or possibly even Friday of that week. So there'll be a couple of questions, just like there'll be a couple of questions on the upper extremity. There'll be a couple of questions on the lower extremity on this next exam. It involves no dissection on your part. There'll just be a lecture talking about the major groups of nerves, major groups of muscles, so that as you move on in your medical career, you have some vague idea about what's going on below the waist. Okie dokie. If there is a better day, I'm open to moving it, but there don't seem to be a lot between now and the 21st of November. Yes.
Will people attending an exam like written questions?
I'm sorry, what?
Will people attending and like written questions for the lower limb?
Will
the people attending and like written questions? For the
Yes.
lower limb?
Would you like me to elaborate? No. I mean, just like in the quiz, there was a written question on the upper limb. Okay, so let me go through all this stuff, and then I'll tell you a little bit about what you have to do in lab today. Okay, you'll remember way back when, like the first day or two, when we opened up the spinal cord, we noted that there were 3 levels of covering the spinal meninges on covering the spinal cord. Out here there was a tough thing called the dura. Beneath that was something called the arachnoid, which you didn't see much of, just some little sort of spider webby stuff that had sort of fallen down. And then the pia mater, which we told you was there, but you couldn't really tell it because it is totally adhering to the neural tissue. And in a normal person who hadn't died and hadn't had their back opened up and their spinal cord opened up, there would be a lot of cerebrospinal fluid in here in what's known as the subarachnoid space between the arachnoid and the pia, and this stuff is sort of turned over. You make about a full volume of it every 7.5 hours. So it's under pressure, and it sort of pushes the arachnoid up against the dura to form this large space known as the subarachnoid space. So this is what you sort of learned a bit about and saw something of in that first couple of days. And covering the bone of the vertebrae and any other bones we've seen is a layer of connective tissue known as the periosteum. So this is not a tooth, it's actually bone that's been turned inside out down here. So you have sort of bone here, articular cartilage at the top. Then you have the shaft of the bone. And wrapping around it is this tough connective tissue known as periosteum, which they peeled back to show you that the periosteum has a blood supply, it has nerves and arteries and veins. And then on the inside of the bone, there's usually a medullary cavity. And on the inside of the bone, this next slide shows that. Never mind. Okay, on the inside of the bone, there's actually something. Let me that go away. On the inside of the bone, there's another layer known as the endosteum. So it's periosteum on the surface that you see, but there's an endosteum, another layer on the inside, which we don't really bother about. Okay, and in the spinal cord, outside, there's an epidural, there's something outside the dura covering the spinal cord, known as an epidural space, and in the spinal cord there's various venous things and fat stuff out there, most of which we didn't see. Okay, the same meningeal layers that are covering the spinal cord are also covering the brain, but it gets a little bit more complicated for a variety of reasons. Should you saw off the back of your skull or your friend's skull, you would see, obviously, cranial cavity inside. This is the parietal bone. There's a lambdoid suture. Okay. The sagittal suture, and there's the occiput. And you'll recall we mentioned earlier that cranial bones have an outer table of hard, compact bone and an inner table of hard, compact bone. But on the inside, there's this network, sort of looks like Swiss cheese or something, of holes known as the diploid or diploic bone, filling the inside of the cranial bones. And the outside is covered by periosteum. There's the diploid, where they have endosteum surrounding this part, and then there's periosteum on the inside of these cranial bones. And there it is to show it again in living gray. That's periosteum covering the outer table, the outside of the cranial bones. And that's periosteum, another layer of periosteum covering the inside of the cranial bones. Okay, so if we fit in this same set of meninges that we saw in the vertebral region, okay, we have periosteum covering the outside of the cranial bones, periosteum covering the inside of the cranial bones, and then there's the dura, the same dura that you saw when you opened up the spinal cord. Then you have the arachnoid, okay, shown here in green, which is actually when it's puffed up with cerebrospinal fluid under there, it actually looks more like a spider web. And then you have the pia, which is the sort of blue lining the inside, and that's your subarachnoid space. Okay. In this region, however, the dura in the cranial region out here has two layers. So there's a meningeal part, okay, just like the one that you saw wrapping around the spinal cord. And then there's a dural part, a periosteal part. Okay, so this area here is referred to as the dura, but it has two layers. One layer associated with the bone and one layer associated with the nervous tissue. And this looks really nice. It's, so no big deal, right? We got this double layer of dura wrapping around here. Gee, that's pretty straightforward. Unfortunately, it gets more complicated because sometimes these two layers separate from one another to do some really interesting things. So there's the periosteal layer of the dura and the meningeal layer of dura, but it's all referred to as the cranial dura. Okay, so cranial dura has two layers that generally are fused around the edge. Okay. Here it is looking at the brain. So outside, here's the dura. Okay, there's the arachnoid, which is pushed up against the dura normally because there's all this cerebrospinal fluid under it. And then covering the brain surface itself is the pia mater. And between the pia and the arachnoid is where the cerebrospinal fluid lives. So I say in a normal brain, the arachnoid is pushed up against the dura on the inside, so that the subdural space in a living, functioning person has nothing in it. It's what we call a potential space. They're two separate things, but there's nothing in the middle. Okay, this lecture has a lot of these little solves. Okay, so what's going on with the dura in the cranium that we've talked about? okay, which has these two layers, and the dura that we saw down in the vertebral region. So here's the pericranium, or the periosteum, that's sort of lining the bone on both sides. Although on the inside here, the periosteal layer is also has the other dura attached to it. And down here on the vertebrae, there's just periosteum wrapping around the bone, just like it is all the other bones in the body. So the periosteal layer of the dura, the bone-related layer, you know, there's periosteum on the inside of this cranial bone, and there's periosteum on the outside of the cranial bone. That's fine. The meningeal part of the dura, okay, which in the cranium is fused with this other one, is related to the nervous system. So it comes down the inside of the cranium. The bony periosteal part wraps around the bone, whereas the nervous system, the meningeal part, continues down and follows the spinal cord all the way down, so that when you get down to where you cut it open in the lumbar region, there's just the meningeal part of the dura. Periosteum is more related to the bone, but because there's a big gap here, they aren't really related. This dura is the meningeal part of the dura, which is half as thick, as it were, from this stuff up here. So the meningeal part continues down the spinal cord. The periosteal part stays on the cranial bone. But obviously the subarachnoid space, which contains cerebrospinal fluid, is continuous up here all the way down, which is, as we said, which is why if you want to tap the cerebrospinal fluid, one way is you can sort of stick a needle in here and hope, like everything, you don't hit the spinal cord and brain, or you can go down in the lumbar region where you've got that cauda equina and stick a needle